both physically and non-physically. The understanding of suffering non-physically will help physical suffering. So we must first inquire together into the nature of suffering, why human beings psychologically, inwardly go through agonies. This inquiry is not cynical or sadistic, but this must be, one must inquire whether suffering psychologically can end. Is that question self-motivated? Is that question irrelevant? Because we are inflicting, human beings are inflicting psychologically a great deal of suffering on others. We get hurt deeply, which we talked about at the beginning of this talk, of these talks. That's also suffering, and the consequences of being hurt psychologically. We went into it, the resistance, the isolation, fears and so on. And in the Christian world, suffering has been avoided. The worship of a symbol. But suffering still exists. In the Asiatic world, there are all kinds of explanations for suffering, but yet they suffer. Apparently, there is no end to suffering. The human sorrow, the human pain, the grief that seems to have no end. And we ought to inquire together, not verbally, intellectual, but or romantically, find out whether it is possible, whether there is an ending completely of sorrow. Because where there is sorrow, there is no love. Where there is sorrow, there is no compassion. Where there is sorrow, there is no depth through intelligence. So one must go into this question. Who is it that suffers? This is related to the question of death also. We'll go into that too. There's time this morning. Who is it that goes through agony, tears, and utter loneliness and despair when you lose somebody whom you think you love? Who is it that suffers? What is the nature of that feeling or that state in consciousness? You understand all this? We are meeting each other, aren't we? Or the speaker is talking to himself. These are your problems, not that of the speaker. So please listen, inquire, find out. Not leave it to somebody else. Because if you leave it to somebody else to solve this problem, then you depend on others, and therefore you lose your own intrinsic capacity to solve all the human problems of which you are. So we are asking, who is it that suffers? When you say, shed tears, feel utterly lost, the shock of something you have held dear is gone or lost. Who is it that has this feeling of great pain? Which means, who is it? Who is the I that says, I suffer? Who is this entity that feels this shock and the pain and the despair of loneliness? Please, this is an important question to put to and to ask, because for when we are inquiring into the nature of dying, though on a lovely morning it may be morbid, but it's not. There too, who is it that's dying? Who is the psyche? What is the nature of the psyche, the me, the I, that suffers? You know, we have clung to the idea the I is something permanent. The I has has a continuity. The repetition, my house, my property, my house, my knowledge, my experience, my conditioning, my fear, my pleasure which is secretive. So, who is this I? The various psychologists have given various interpretations to it. If we could put aside all the psychologists, what they have said, and observe for ourselves, including what the speaker is saying, observe for ourselves very clearly, without any direction, without any motive, actually what we are. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Hindus have talked about knowing yourself, not according